Droid.
Hello and welcome. What we're going to be doing is modeling a 3D droid logo today using curves in Blender 2.5. This is a heavily requested tutorial and it's pretty lengthy, so let's go ahead and get started. When you first jump into Blender, you're going to see this ugly looking gray cube. Hit X on the keyboard and then Enter to delete it. The first thing we're going to need to do is set up our reference image. This is particularly important because we're going to need something to trace. So I've chosen a droid logo from Google, the little Android guy, droid, yeah, him. In order to set up the reference image, we're going to need to be in our top orthographic view. You do that by hitting 7 on the numeric keyboard, and then that takes us into our top perspective. Then if you're in the perspective, hit 5 again on the numeric keyboard, and that will take you into your top orthographic view. Now we continue by clicking on the little pop-out window. So then you're going to come down to toggle quad view. This is real similar to Maya, 3ds Max, Cinema 4D, a bunch of other 3D programs that you might have dabbled in before. This is going to allow you to have multiple viewports to view the reference image in. So now if we come down to the checkbox for background images, go ahead and select that. Then twirl down the menu and hit Add Image. This is going to open up another twirl down and hit Open. Now you'll be able to browse for the file that will be your reference image. Mine's on my desktop and it's this little green droid logo. And then hit Open to bring it into the viewport. Alright, now that we have our reference images in place, it's not quite what we wanted, so we needed to come back down to Background Images, select All Views, and select Top. This will make the top orthographic view the only one with the reference image. Now if we come in and we turn off Toggle Quad View, we can go ahead and change the transparency to get it where we like so we can start tracing this droid logo. So I've switched into the top orthographic view, and now we're going to come back down to where the background images were and adjust the transparency to get it nice and transparent to where we can see it. Now we're ready to go ahead and trace this droid logo using Bezier curves. We're going to zoom in. So if we hit Shift A on the keyboard, that's going to give us a context menu that's going to bring up meshes, curves, surfaces, a slew of different options to create geometry. What we're looking for is curve and then the Bezier curve. We're going to select that and it places a Bezier curve right in the center of our workspace. I'm going to go ahead and delete this because this little center, the Bezier curve is placed where the 3D cursor is, and if you see, if I click around, if I left click around, you'll see the 3D cursor moving. So if I click over here and then I go add a Bezier curve, that's where the curve will be created. So I just wanted to point that out. So let's add the Bezier curve back, Shift A, curve, Bezier curve, and there it is right at our 3D cursor location. So if I hit Tab on the keyboard, this is going to put me into edit mode. I now have control points to manipulate this Bezier curve. The types of handles that we are going to deal with, there's a couple different types. The first that you see here is purple, and it's called an align handle. They're dependent upon each other, and they move essentially wherever the curve moves in a straight line. So the curve will always be in a perfect straight line. The other type of handle is a free handle. You get to that by toggling between H on the keyboard. If I hit H and then I select one of the ends and I start moving it around, you'll see that the curve isn't affected because we can manipulate both sides of the curve with a free handle, as you see now. So you can clearly see the difference, and if I go back to the center control point and hit H, it turns back into an align handle as opposed to a free handle. So just toggling those back and forth will do that for you. And now you can clearly see the difference of how the curve followed the center point instead of the individual handles. The third type of handle is a vector handle, and essentially by hitting V on the keyboard, that will point the handle that you're currently working on in the direction of the next handle in line. So if you hit V, you'll clearly see that it is pointing in the same direction as the next handle. And believe it or not, I told you there was 3 curves. Well, actually there's 4, and that is an auto curve, and it's Blender's calculation of where it best thinks the curve should be. We're not going to really use it too much because it's not really what we need. So, but I just want to show you real quick while we're at it and tell you that there is this auto curve. If you go on the keyboard and you hit Shift H, that's going to go ahead and manipulate into a auto curve. And if we drag it up, you'll see Blender's already trying to calculate the best the best route for the curve essentially. So, we can manipulate these handles, and you'll see Blender clearly, tries to make the best calculation and best fit for the curve. What we're going to do is go ahead and hit H twice on the keyboard to get it back to an align handle. Then we're going to hit G to go ahead and start lining up these control points to make our shape. Now we're going to grab the other control point as well, hit G on the keyboard again, and put that at his right shoulder. Okay, now this part is going to seem a little bit crazy because you're going to see me clicking all over the place, and it's going to look like a big mess. You could stop and essentially adjust every handle and go about it that way if you wanted to make things real nice and tidy as you go, but I like to go ahead and just get this done pretty quickly and control click all over the place to make the shape I want, and then I go back and clean it up. So we're going to go ahead, you could extrude this by hitting E on the keyboard and extrude out another control point, but what's even better than that is we're going to go ahead and left click, control left click, and by doing that it's going to start dropping more control points. You want to get this at places where it's usually change in directions or halfway between a curve, somewhere along those lines. So you'll see exactly what I'm talking about here in a second when we start going through this, but essentially that's what you want to do. So if we zoom in a little more and then control click, okay, that curve's way off, but that's okay. And we control click again, control click, control click. And this is like halfway between a circle, like I was mentioning before, or arc or whatever, and just keep control clicking. And something, if you end up like grabbing a manipulator handle or a point and you're like, oh man, I can't, something's wrong, that happens sometimes, especially when you have a mess of control handles and points and etc. Either click off of the control point and then you can start control clicking again, or just undo what you did and continue control clicking. So again, if we just control click here, and also I'm going to skip there. Yeah, there is supposed to be a point right there, but I'm going to show you how to add one in later. So we're going to skip that one. I'll keep control clicking, clicking, and now we want to close the loop. You simply do this since it's a straight line. We're just going to hit C on the keyboard, and that's going to go ahead and close up the loop. So you've got to be thinking, wow, that is the ugliest droid outline I've ever seen. Well, it gets better here in a second. We come over to our panel and select Object Data and select the shape 2D. Now this is going to start filling in this curve a little bit. It's still not what we wanted, but we're going to come into Wireframe so we can see what we're working with, and we're going to go ahead and set these points to where they're actually out making the shape of the droid. So let's do that now. What we're going to do is hold down Shift and start selecting points where there's an evident change in direction, like 90 degrees, something along those lines. So there's changes here, change in direction here, and we're just going to keep changing direction here. There's not one there. This is the point we left out earlier. Change in direction here. So we just keep selecting these here, 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 and here. Alright, well this is where the magic comes in. What we're going to do is go ahead and hit V on the keyboard, and the magic's going to take place. So here we go. V on the keyboard, and voila, we have a pretty, not a perfect shape, but we have a pretty good looking shape of what our droid model, logo, whatever is supposed to be. So now we just got to go in here and fine tune some things and get that squared up. And oops, I accidentally went out of my orthographic view. So if that happens to you, just hit 7 on the keyboard again. I went to user orthographic. If you see your reference image disappear, just hit 7 on the keyboard, and that will take you back to your top orthographic view. If I scroll in a little bit here and I start tidying things up a bit, what we're going to do is right click this point, and we're going to hit G on our keyboard and start placing these a little bit better than what they are. So right click, G on the keyboard. Okay. Now this leads us into our missing point. What we're going to need to do in order to get our points is we're going to need to subdivide between 2 points. So essentially point A plus point B equals point C, and point C being the middle point. What we're going to need to do is select point A, then select point B, and then hit W on the keyboard to subdivide, and then hit subdivide, and now you have your point in the middle that you're missing. Now we can take this point and move it to about the approximate location of where his leg should be. And what we're going to need to do is flip around this handle because it got a little inverted. So let's grab one side of that, twist that back around, and his leg's starting to shape up. So let's move this around a little bit. G on the keyboard. Move this into a better position. G on the keyboard. And also turn that into a vector. So we're going to move this one, shape this one up a little bit as well. And let's see. These handles need to be cleaned up a little bit, so we're going to take that, clean that up. And we're going to take this other handle, clean this up a little bit, G on the keyboard. And take these, clean these up just a little bit, and this foot should be looking pretty good. G on this handle. Get that round shape. G on the keyboard again after selecting it. So G to straighten it out. And that looks pretty good. So you could sit there and fine tune it as much or as little as you'd like, but looks pretty good. So we're going to move on. So what we have now is we're going to select this one, G, move that into place. G, move that into place. Alright, let me get this over here, and we're going to hit G, flip this one around because this one got inverted as well. And we're going to clean up these handles a little bit too. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and hurry through this. You get the point. Move the handles around and place them where you would like. Adjust the handles accordingly to fit your model. Go ahead and just clean these up a little bit like I'm doing. I'm going to go ahead and speed ahead. If we zoom out and tab out of edit mode, you see that we have a pretty good shape going on here. Again, the shape is all subject to the individual, so if you feel like making yours absolutely perfect, go for it. So we're ready to tab back into edit mode, and what we're going to do now is go ahead and make his arms. We're going to hit Shift A and add a Bezier circle, and we're going to take that and we're going to move it by hitting G on the keyboard over to approximate area where his arm is. And we're going to do the exact same thing as we did for his body. We're going to go ahead and start just moving these points into place. We're also going to add in some extra control points by subdividing between the A and B points essentially and creating a third point. So I'm going to go ahead and speed through this pretty quickly, so if you need to stop the movie, go ahead and do so until you get what you're looking for, and then continue back in a minute. So now that we got that arm looking pretty good, we're going to tab out of that, scroll out a little bit, and see everything looks pretty good. So let's tab back in and go ahead and make his other arm. This is going to be real easy to do. We're just going to duplicate one arm and move it to the other side. So the way you do that is just hit BB on your keyboard for box select, select it all, Shift D to duplicate, and then just drag it over to the approximation of where his other arm is. That's simple, saves us a lot of time. We don't have to go in there and manipulate anything, and we just line it up a little bit and we're good to go. So that is looking pretty good. That all we got to do is his head now, and then make him 3D, and we're good to go. So let's go ahead and left click and get our 3D cursor up around his head so we can add another Bezier curve, and then hit Shift A. It's going to pop out our little quick menu, and we're going to choose Bezier curve, and we're going to start placing these about where they should be. So again, same situation, place the points where you want them to be, and we're going to start control clicking on places of change. So we're going to click right by his ear. We're going to zoom in a little bit. There we go, control click again, control click, and keep on control clicking. Control click here, another change here. And the reason why we didn't make a point in the middle between the ear, like the round shape like we did before, was because essentially it's not enough space to really make a difference, so we didn't really need to. And then to close off the loop, just hit C for close. Now we're going to come back in and we're going to start selecting our different points so we can go ahead and make the shape look a lot cleaner like we did before. Just keep selecting the points of change. So essentially almost everything here like changes in some kind of direction, so it's pretty much everything. You could have box selected if you wanted to, but I selected them individually. Then hit V, and his head is almost there. It's pretty good. So we're just going to tidy it up a little bit. You know the routine for tidying up. Just move things into place, you know, by using the manipulator handles, and by hitting G on the keyboard and dragging it to where you want it to go. So also something to note is you don't want to drag these handles out too far. You want like kind of like a happy medium between the two handles. So get something that's like a happy medium. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and quickly clean this up as well, and then we should be good to go. Alright, now that we got our droid cleaned up, the head of him at least, we're going to tab back out, and that's looking really good. So what's next? We need to go ahead and make him 3D, because right now he's just a curve. So what fun is that? None really. So let's make him 3D. And we do that by coming back over to our object data button, and what we're going to do is our shape is 2D. This is where we made it 2D before. We're going to come down and we're going to extrude it. So let's give this a little bit of an extrude, about 0.10. That's looking pretty good. And you're like, wow, that doesn't look good because nothing happened. What we're going to do is go ahead and rotate our environment a little bit. And there you go. You can see the little lines, which means that it does have depth. So we're now going to come into our pull down, and we're going to change that back from wireframe to a solid. And when you do that, now you can really see it. So that looks pretty good. Even though it looks pretty good, there is definitely one problem here. This is a blind droid, so he doesn't know where he's going. So we're going to back up. We're going to undo that. Or you could just turn the extrude down. And we're going to go ahead and give this guy some eyes. We're going to come back into our top orthographic, zoom in here, and let's go ahead and give him some eyes. So the big thing here is to make sure you have the original curve selected. Then you can tab back into edit mode, select our Bezier circle, and we're going to scale this down, S on the keyboard, scale this down a little bit, and you can see this is cutting right in and looking like an eye. It's a one-eyed droid. Alright, and what we're going to do now is go ahead and just grab that, shrink it down a little more, and then we're going to grab it and move it over into position, scale it back up, and there you go. That's looking pretty good. And then we're going to duplicate it, Shift D, move it over. Now we have the eyes. That's simple. That is looking like a good droid. He's not blind anymore, and if we rotate back in, you'll see he's flat because we undid the extrusion. We're going to extrude a little bit more like we did before, and put about 0.12 or 11, I'm sorry, and make him solid. And now he has eyes, and he's looking a lot better than he did. And we're going to zoom in a little bit here, and we're going to talk about some of the options we have in dealing with these edges. So when you extruded it, the edges were a little too sharp for you. We can go ahead and adjust that so it's not as sharp, and we can do that by going over to the bevel and going to the depth of the bevel. And this is going to go ahead and smooth out the edges a little bit, but that may be a little jagged for you, so you can adjust the resolution, and that's going to even smooth it out the edges even more. So now he's a smooth droid and can pick up the other female droids because he's not a robotic looking droid anymore. Okay, what else is there? Let's see. Oh, let's talk about the width really quick. Let's go ahead and flip down our options to 0, resolution back to 0, depth back to 0, and we can talk about the width. Essentially, the way the width works is something similar to a mask in After Effects. So if you were to take the mask expansion and expand it past, 1 in this case, it's going to expand outwards, and if you put it under, it's going to expand inwards. So right now it's expanding outwards the current curve, and right now we're at 0.94, so we're just a little inside of the original curve. So again, this just goes plus or minus values beyond 1.0 to expand the curve in a bigger or smaller direction, because you might want to give them thinner legs, you might want to make them thicker, whatever it is. It just expands the width of the curve essentially. So since this is looking pretty good, we're going to go ahead and take a render, come to the little camera, and then hit image, and that's going to pop out a render of our droid. There we go. Let's go back. And we'll just quickly go over some of our render settings as well. You could have a frame range from start to finish. Also, we're only rendering 25, that's why it was smaller, of 1920 by 1080 with 25% of that. So essentially that's why our image looks smaller. If we raise this up to 100 and we render that, hitting image, you'll see that it's pretty large. So that's only 25%. This is 100%, but the one we had previously was 25%. So we're going to take that back down. And if you wanted to render this out and get a better angle on the droid instead of this like weird awkward angle we have, what we're going to do is we're going to go into toggle quad view, scroll down, and we're going to hit, and wherever your perspective camera is, whatever view that is in, that's what's going to render, if you didn't know that. So if I was to go ahead and hit Shift F, it's going to let me fly the camera around. So let's go ahead and get out of the quad view, and let's go into our camera perspective by hitting 0 on the keyboard, numeric keyboard, and let's hit Shift F. Oh, it's getting a little crazy. You got to do this very slowly, because if you start doing it real fast, your camera gets kind of out of control. And essentially you can pan the camera around, you can dolly in, out, track it around to wherever you want it to go till you get the angle you're looking for. It's kind of hard to do on this tutorial because, yeah, the screen delay is pretty rough. So let's frame them back up. We're trying to show you how it works a little bit. See, we're moving over top of them to try and get more top angle, and we're gonna hit render. See, now we have a more top angle of them just from moving the camera around. It's actually pretty easy once you get the hang of it to use the camera fly through. If not, you can come in and adjust the camera in your quad view, or move that around until you get the angle you're looking for. You can rotate it a little bit, and that's rotate it. Keep rotating it, rotate them around, and we're rotating in the different views to get the different angles that we want. So you can see it lining up in the perspective view, and once you have this lined up and looking the way you want, then you can go ahead and render it. So we have a top view looking down on him. That's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and render him out. And that's looking pretty good. That's a pretty good looking droid. This is from top down. It looks like he's standing up. If we wanted him to stand up for real, we could always rotate him instead of having the camera look top down. If the camera was looking straight on, we just rotate him to stand him up. Same difference. And that's really about all there is to making a 3D logo in Blender using curves. Again, hope you enjoyed the tutorial. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop by and leave me a comment, and I'll go ahead and answer your questions or whatever it is you might have. If you have any other tutorial ideas that you might want to see done in Blender, feel free to drop me those as well, and we'll try to take care of that for you. Y'all take it light, and remember to watch out for droid.